Live.
And we're back. This is the Trev and Drew Show. Today, I am playing the role of Poppy, aka Pascal, aka one of the creepiest people that's ever played Survivor, but we'll get to that later. And Trev is playing the role of Sweet Pea, one of the more, I guess, innocent people that's ever played the game Survivor, although opinions on that may vary as we talk about her throughout this episode, because we are talking about Survivor, if not the most underrated seasons in the history of the show. That, along with Guatemala, would be my top two most underrated seasons. But Vecepia is by far my most underrated winner in the history of Survivor, and there's no one even close to that. And we'll talk about her progress throughout the game, which ultimately ends with her winning. But Trev, I'm going to ask you first before I give my opinion. My initial opinion of when she won as compared to every other time I've watched the season since then. So what was your initial reaction when she won back then, / whenever you've rewatched it, in the years since?
Well, I didn't remember it back when I didn't remember it. I just knew she won. Like, I knew she won. Oh, I know. But when I rewatched it, I was watching Rob versus Tyson on their Twitch channel. So Rob and Tyson have a little Twitch channel, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna watch Rob's first season. I might just turn it off once he's voted out, And I was blown away. I was not expecting that season to be good because you don't hear about it.
You don't hear about it.
No one talks about it. You say it was so amazing. It was very Newsful-esque. It reminded me like it could have been the 30th season.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and V played, I think, one of the best games ever. And that's like the template for like a perfect winner. I think that's how I would play. Is how she played.
Yeah,
I just think
I agree. If we're playing in an earlier season, I feel like that's exactly how I would play. In a later season, I feel like I might play a little bit differently. At least I would at least make like one very obvious move so I could like feed it to the jury, like, oh look, this is what I did. But I was also really cool, and I was nice to everyone as well. Because you have to do that now. Yeah, you need at least one move to say, "Oh yeah, I did that." So, initial reaction when I first watched it as a kid, this is as a small child, you can only attach yourself to certain characters on TV shows, and so growing up in my mom's salon, it was me, my mom, and my sister watching Survivor Marquesas. And first episode, we're like, okay, well, we're obviously rooting for Sean or Vecepia, like that way. Yeah, it had to be that way. And, when she finally won the game, I'll never forget this moment. I cried. This was like the greatest day in the history of the Black community in my 12-year-old head. My mom, she was happy about it. I don't think my sister cared that much. But, that was a really big motivation to continue watching the show moving forward. I probably still would have watched it anyway, even though the Black cast members from season 5 were not all that fun, and in one instance was just a horrible person, allegedly. So Vecepia, allegedly, but Vecepia winning, like you said, one of the best games played, one of the best under the radar games that has been played, especially up to that point. And I think historically, people looking back on it, and we'll talk about this a little later, I feel like for so long, this season and this winter have been, for lack of a better phrase, they've been shit on a lot.
Yeah.
In the last 15 to 20 years. For like, and I've never really understood the reasoning behind it, because Marquesas is a really fun season, and the winner's confessionals, and she's not the biggest personality on the show, and she's not the biggest hero or the biggest villain, but she does what she needs to do to get to the end and win the game, and we will talk about that as we progress. So we're going to start with the pre-merge. So the beginning of the game, we have Mararamu, which is definitely the dumpster fire tribe of the season, and Rotu, who's not. And we'll talk about Road 2's issues pre-merge, which there are not many. But Mariamu, Mariamu, the one thing that people know about Survivor Marquesas is just like the fans that don't really know Survivor. They just know the fact that this was the first season that Boston Rob was on, and that's the only thing that they care about. Now, me personally, I'm not the biggest Boston Rob fan. I think I appreciate what he's done for the game and everything like that, but he's all right. He's there. And so if you only have a passing knowledge of Marquesas, Boston Rob's the only thing that you know. But that tribe starting out had a lot of big personalities.
Yes.
Some lasted longer at the Sepia. You had Sean Rector. You had Hunter Ellis, who we'll talk about in a second. And what were your thoughts of Mariamu, those first 3-4 episodes?
Well, I thought, besides the fact that they were losing, I think they did have fun because they were doing like the weather update, and Hunter was like the weatherman, and Rob was like the cooking host or something.
Yeah.
And Sean was something. I forget what Sean was.
I feel like Sean. I know there was the part where he calls in as an angry black caller, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about how the no-nos were black or something. And he was like, "What do you mean there's black no?" So yeah, they were definitely having a lot of fun. It just sucked that they couldn't win anything.
Yeah.
And this is where we see, because you can't talk about Marquesas, especially the first part, without talking about Boston Rob. This is where the Rob father thing starts to come about, where he gets up to that point. A person like Hunter has never been voted out before that early, and Rob is able to rally the troops and vote out Hunter, which is a big moment, and one of the many big moments that come from this season is the fall of Hunter Ellis.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's the third person voted out of the season. Yeah, because you get Peter, who was a Fruit Loop, according to Boston Rob, and Off His Rocka was the other thing that he said. Then you get it is a Fruit Loop. So how did you see that whole Hunter Ellis short story arc?
I mean, I wanted him to last longer. I knew CBS. I think he was chosen by CBS to be the Colby type, and I think CBS wanted him to go far, and they expected him to go far, at least to the merge. So I think that's why Rob, basically, they're like, well, this 25-year-old kid really got this guy who we wanted to go far. He's going to be something. I think that's what shot him up, getting him out. And
absolutely.
And I think that's what it was, that CBS was like, well, we need to look at this guy.
Yeah, and it's funny in retrospect because now they love the guy that voted him out.
Yeah,
you can't, Boston Rob has made more money from CBS than I think Survivor has paid him. Right. His stints on Amazing Race. He had the reality show with Amber when they were getting married. I'm pretty sure he did one other thing on CBS, and he's played Survivor 5 times, and he was on Island of the Idols. So
5.5.
Yeah, so it's funny to see how that has finally ended with Hunter Ellis not even being talked about anymore.
Did they sell the head for the auction, you think? His giant head?
I think that's probably still on the island. It's got to be still on the island because they're never leaving Fiji, so it's always going to be on the island.
Okay, that's fine.
So what were your opinions on V and Sean pre-merge?
Pre-merge, I really like Sean. Like you said, I thought he was funny, and I liked him and Rob were friends, so I always liked Sean. I thought he was nice. I think that Hunter. I think that that side of the tribe with Hunter and what's her other name? Was it Gina?
It was Hunter, Gina. It was Hunter and Gina, and then everyone else.
I think the way they edited it, they made it seem like Sean and Rob were didn't want to do anything and stuff. But I think that they were so gung ho of doing this. So when Sean and Rob aren't doing anything, they're like, oh, they're not doing anything. But I don't really think that's how it was. I think that Sean's a nice guy. And I think that I mean, I don't know. I thought they edited it weird because they made it seem like
it made Sean, especially in the pre-merge, and we'll get to the post-merge aspect of Sean later on, but pre-merge, I definitely thought he came off like super combative, but in a negative way. Now, post-merge, he's super combative, but that's because he's playing from the bottom.
Yeah, that's
and
why.
He's trying to stay in the game.
Merge.
Yeah, so and I honestly think that in the pre-merge, the reason I had differently was probably because he was associated with Boston Rob, who in this season was wearing a Patriots hat instead of a Red Sox hat. So my opinion of Sean changed throughout the season, but my opinion of V, unlike Rob, I liked V from the very beginning, and like way past why I liked her when I was a kid. As an adult, I liked the fact that she was, she liked everyone. She was complaining about how much drama was going on in the tribe because, there was a lot of drama going on in that Mararamu tribe. And when we get to it, it's almost like Rob doesn't realize the fact that V has been like this the entire time.
Yeah.
And it was eventually down the line starts complaining about the fact that she's being nice to the Rotu people.
Yeah. And then she's just being herself.
So,
but she's just being herself.
Yeah, she's just being herself. So on the Rotu side of things, everything is hunky-dory. They're all kind of weirded out by Kathy, but Kathy's not really doing herself any favors.
No.
And then we get the moment where John Carroll gets stung, where Kathy pees on him, and that's like the big moment of Rotu pre-swap. They win a whole bunch of challenges, and Kathy pees on John, and that's really it.
And that,
and they there's a montage where I think the general gets hurt at some point again. Yeah, so they have a fun little I got hurt montage, but there's nothing really significant.
Yeah,
and so we get to the second tribe swap in the history of the show. They've just first done it in the previous season in Africa, and Kathy, Nalia, and Pascal go to Mararamu, and Vecepia, Sean, and Rob all go to Rotu, where they're immediately on the bottom. Or so we think, because we have our some call him the GOAT, I call him Gabe. Gabe has one of the greatest lines, and this is going to be like a condensed version, but he's basically saying that he's not here to play Survivor. He's here to make friends with people and to see if 16 people from all walks of life can do this thing and make a society in the wilderness. And everyone's just looking at him like, dude, why are you here?
Why are you here? What do you think you're getting into? That almost made the whole season for me. Comedy wise,
it was good.
So funny. With nothing else happened, that was worth it. Seeing that, so funny. What?
And Rob hops on it, and they vote out Gabe.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you think, okay, Rob, V, and Sean, they're probably still on the bottom, but maybe they can work their way in. And this is where I feel Rob both screws his game and makes V's game even better, because V is making friends with everyone on this swap tribe with all the Rotu 4. Yeah. Meanwhile, Rob and Sean are being mostly Rob, are being very combative, especially with John Carroll. And there's those moments where Rob is giving confessionals and he is bad-mouthing everyone on the tribe, and he makes some very dated comments about John Carroll. He's a big-time queer, whatever,
Tom queer.
There's things like that. It's and he's going off about V, saying that she's kissing ass because she's making friends with everyone. And I said, that's not really kissing ass. It's more... she's playing the game. Yeah, she's playing the game. She's just being a nice person.
Being nice. I would kiss someone for $1 million.
Absolutely. and he has the other confessional where it's I don't trust V. I never trust V. Why? V's obviously, and probably besides Nalia, one of the most trustworthy people in the season. Yeah. And when we get to Final Tribal, we're going to talk about that because the jury even calls them both liars, which is just insane. So, Rob is screwing himself because I honestly feel like if the tribes had merged, and Rob hadn't done as much as he was doing, I felt like they would have probably voted out Kathy first because she was now a Maramu and they weren't big fans of her to begin with. But because Rob was being so combative, we get to the meeting between Rob and Kathy where they discuss what's going to happen with the merge, and you can take that. You can take that.
With Kathy and Rob.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the throwback to Rob, and I was just thinking about this the other day. So, throwback to pre-merge with Rob and Sarah. I did not know he had a showmance before Amber. So I'm like, Rob come here? Like, is he using Survivor as a dating service? I don't understand.
Hell, it worked. So
it worked. And then did you see? He was like flirting hard with Kathy during that summit.
Yeah. That was, I had forgotten about that, and when I went back and rewatched that episode, or that scene, he was flirting very hard. I mean, yeah, they had a few beers in them, but still, I think...
I'm like, oh yeah, he was now like, I'm like, Rob, what are you doing? But yeah, that was funny.
About him he has such great charisma that, and I know we've talked about this before, but I usually, in the seasons that he's playing from the bottom, those are the seasons that I really like Boston Rob. So basically, Marquesas and Heroes vs. Villains. Even though in Heroes vs. Villains, he's not really at the bottom until he realizes he's at the bottom and it's too late. But I didn't hate him in Heroes vs. Villains. I actually really enjoyed him. And in Marquesas, he's very rude and all that, but he gave great confessionals, and he was a fun character. But in Redemption Island, All-Stars gains control, and it's kind of a slog. It's okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, he's probably gonna win. He's probably he lost. Oh man, that sucks. But he's that type of character where he's getting all these confessionals, but you can kind of tell that he's not going to win. And the reason that with this season, it's crazy that people think that he was the main villain of the season, when in reality it was very much John Carroll, and we're going to get to him in a second. But John Carroll is by far the biggest villain of this season, and like in a Survivor type villain way. He's not a horrible person or anything. But I liked John Carroll, and besides Giuseppe and Sean, I feel like John should have been given
a second chance,
another chance, because he had great gameplay. Yes, he was on the wrong side of the first alliance overturn minority majority alliance defeat. I can't remember the phrase. Yeah. So I feel like John Carroll definitely should have been brought back. But like we mentioned earlier, it seems like CBS wants us to forget about Marquesas, except for the fact that this was Boston Rob's first season. Yeah. So Kathy and Rob have their summit meeting, and we get to the merge.
Yeah.
And the merge is where all
my heck
the craziness. Rob is convinced. Yeah, Rob convinces Kathy that the Row 2-4 plan on voting her out as soon as the merge happens, which is true. They have said it. They will be doing it. And he plants that little seed in her ear, and we get back to camp, and all hell, like you said, all hell breaks loose. And what happens from there?
Then what I was going to ask you is, why did he make Zoe tell Kathy that she wanted to vote her out? He just said, I'm going to get these guys together. Like, what was his reasoning to do that? Because the first thing he does is, Zoe, Kathy, let's go into the woods. Now, Zoe, you tell Kathy you wanted to vote her out first. Like, that just stirs stuff up. I mean,
you don't know anything about that, do you? Honestly, I think I understand where he was coming from with that, because if he can convince Kathy that these four are lying to her, you can get her on your side. So now you have Sean, V, and Kathy, and then you have to get Kathy to convince Pascal and Nalia, because that they're a group.
Yeah, they're like a threesome.
Together. Those three on you three's side, you can flip the game then.
Yeah.
The problem is, because he's coming off so combative, it rubs even V the wrong way, to the point where And we're going to get to that tribal in a second, but we get to that immunity challenge, and Rob kind of knows that he might be leaving at this point. And what does Rob decide to do?
So in the immunity challenge, his most important immunity challenge ever, he possibly ruined his Survivor experience forever because of one stupid thing. Remember, it was on the platforms. They were on the water, on platforms. All they had to do was stand on the platforms, and you couldn't touch a platform. And if you touch a platform, you fall, or you lose. If you fall off, you lose. He decides to joke around and try to splash John Carroll while on the platform, and causing him to fall in, losing immunity, and then getting voted out. I mean, what? Why did
goes?
I was like,
yeah.
Just what? So I guess he's still like talking like, oh, I got this. I'm just gonna splash him.
Yeah, and it's crazy because realistically, that could have been the end of Boston Rob in the history of Survivor. Because I'm pretty sure we talked about this, but I think it's only Rob and Sheehan are the only two people that didn't make jury that made it to All Stars.
Yeah.
And now, obviously he's gone on to become Boston Rob, but
so
that could have been, it could have been the end right there. And if they had, it's crazy because if they had just brought back anyone else, any of those three people that I mentioned earlier, so V, Sean, and John, back for All Stars instead of Boston Rob might not exist anymore. He might not be selling $100 hats on Twitter and Instagram, if not for the fact that they chose him over everybody else except for Kathy to bring back for All Stars. Yeah. So this is the first moment that V and Sean, I think it might be the second one now that I think about it, that they don't vote the same. V votes for Boston Rob, and Boston Rob, Sean, and Kathy vote for one of the Row 2-4.
Yeah.
And this is important as the game progresses because one of V's big things is just because everyone thinks that me and Sean are in an alliance doesn't mean that me and Sean are in an alliance.
Yeah, and we're going to vote no matter what together.
Yeah, she's going to vote for who she thinks to help her game.
Yeah.
So we get to probably the most important episode of the season, which is crazy because half of it is very bad. So we get to the final 9, and Kathy, is convinced now that there's these Row 2-4 people, and then there's everybody else, and they're going to start picking them off one by one. Yeah. She tries to tell Pascal and Nalia, this is one of those moments, one of the many moments where I'm like, Pascal's not fun. He mentions the fact that it would be a travesty if V or Sean won the game. And as a little kid, you hear that, and it's like, okay. But as an adult, every time I hear it, I'm like, okay, Southern white judge from Georgia saying this about V and Sean, especially V. V's never portrayed as being lazy or a horrible person during the season. I guess you can make the case for the way Sean was portrayed, at least portrayed on the show, but you never see any of that with V.
No.
So the fact that Pascal's saying it would be a travesty if V or Sean won.
Yeah. Where did
it's what? Yeah. So we get to the horrible part of the episode, which is the kite challenge.
Yes.
Where the prize is you win a Snickers bar and you go scuba diving.
Yes.
You win one Snickers bar, which the winner eventually just split and gives to everyone on the tribe.
Yeah.
But she also gets to go scuba diving. It's Kathy. And at that part of the season, I'm pretty sure when the last time I rewatched this, I was rewatching with a friend. And he even said, "This is so boring." I said, "No, don't worry about it. The episode gets really good, I swear. Wait till after the commercial." So after the commercial comes back, it's the I call it the pecking order challenge because they have different names every season that they do it. Yeah. So the pecking order challenge comes up, and this is very significant to the history of Survivor because this is where the Row 2-4 pick off one by one. They show Nalia and Pascal how everyone's getting.
Yeah, how
voted out, and there's blows a kiss to Sean. Yeah, he blows the kiss to Sean. Sean puts it on his ass, and they vote out. I think in order it goes: Sean, V, Kathy, Pascal, or maybe Nalia then Pascal. But Nalia starts to catch on to the fact oh, there's something else going on here. And to her credit, the fact that she sees this and decides to do something about it. There's that moment with her and Pascal in the woods, and she's like, I didn't come here to make 5th or 6th. I came here to win the game, and I think it's bogus that these 4 are flaunting it in our face that they're about to win this game.
Yeah.
So we have the moment where Pascal, Nalia, V, Sean, and Kathy flip the game on John Carroll, and he's out. And that's a big moment in the history of the show because it had never happened to that point.
No.
A majority right. How do you feel? How do you feel about it? What's up?
You cut out there for a second, but I said he already won his head.
Yeah.
He already thought he won. So.
He has the moment where he's laying in the trees and he says, "I feel like Pascal and Leah are really rooting for me to win." Yeah. It's like, yeah, bro, they definitely want you to win, especially the Southern white judge. Does he know?
But he wasn't there when Rob outed him, so he might not.
Yeah.
know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. True. So yeah, they vote out John, and the only real lull in this season are the episodes from where Zoe gets voted out to when the general gets voted out, which I believe is 2 or 3 episodes. And yes, those 3 episodes are not the best television, except for the reward challenge that Sean and Pascal go on, which was very emotional, and it was also very funny. Where he's, my balls when he's on the horse. But it was a nice moment, especially it was a nice moment, especially for 2001, where you have this Southern white judge and this black kid from Harlem, and they're bonding over things they may not have ever had the chance of doing in real life now, especially with some things, but. It was a nice moment, and like even watching it back now, I've had those types of moments. I went to college in a very rural area, so I had to make friends with a lot of people that that I disagreed with a lot of opinions and views, but it was still the fact that we could still make these bonds, and a lot of them are still friends with to this day because we were able to look past to discriminate people against was really nice. So they have that moment, and it's crazy because I know you're gonna talk about this in a second, but then there's like this big 360 right after the general gets voted out, where Pascal immediately goes back to, I don't like Sean or V. Yeah. So what happens there?
It was the most absurd thing I have seen on Survivor. I've never seen anything like it. He goes first. He's saying, like you said, it's a tragedy if Sean wins, So then once they become aligned, when they go against Sean, and then they vote out Zoe and Tammy and the general, and so then they're really good friends. And then they have that reward challenge. It's really nice. And then like literally right when the general is voted out, all of a sudden Pascal's like, "Well, we've been duped. We've been duped.
We've been duped."
We've been duped. I don't understand what the heck he was talking about. So he's like, so they're not going to let you win? Like, that's how you've been duped? I don't understand. How are you? What?
Yeah. And he has, I don't even think it's a confessional, but he says to Kathy straight up because, and this is the other thing I guess we should talk about now before we get to this tribal. V keeps saying that her and Sean aren't in an alliance, and it's not a black thing. I understand it only because there are certain, especially on a reality show like this, you do connect with or that come from the same background as you. You just kind of have to do that. There's a bond deeper than the game bond, and I understand that. But the fact that she kept trying to play it off as we're not together, it's like, okay, yeah, that's true because he voted differently a couple times, but you guys are together. But I'm not gonna put too much emphasis on that.
Yeah.
Because the racial issue is probably there, especially in Pascal's case. And the only reason I say, especially in Pascal's case, is because Kathy goes to Pascal and mentions the fact that V mentioned this whole racial aspect. And Pascal, it's in their nature to act like that and say things like that. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's still here. I can't believe he's saying these things. But it's also like 2001, so you can get away with saying things like that. But when he said that, that's when I kind of was like, yeah, even if it's not a racial thing to them, it's absolutely racial, somewhat racial thing to you.
I'm still shocked. Even in 2001, like, I can't believe that person was on TV. I can't believe that was a.
I mean, there have been more horrible people since then on the show. It's crazy because everyone likes to compare Roger and Elizabeth in Australia. Yeah, people like to compare Roger and Elizabeth from Australia to Pascal and Aaliyah from Marquesas. It's like, no, because with Roger and Elizabeth, they were very much father-daughter. I never got any type of creep vibe from Roger. With Pascal and Aaliyah, there were a lot of times where it's like, oh man, he's saying a lot of things. I'm just, no, and yeah, and then did he have his wife or his? No, he said he only had daughters because there's the creepy moment where Gabe left him the letter.
Oh, we got to talk about Gabe. Oh no, we talked about Gabe. Well, his little teddy bear. He had his teddy bear with him. And
at the reunion show, yeah.
Why did he write Pascal a letter again? Why did he write?
I don't know, but there's just that moment where Pascal says, "Oh, I don't have any daughters," and Gabe was like a son to me, and blah blah blah. It's like, man, you're so weird. Yeah, I can't wait for you to go.
Yeah, because remember when he found out he was voted out? When that's the next week. Oh, they voted Gabriel out. Oh,
and he cried. And he cried. He cried. So right before we get to the final five tribal council, I think we should briefly touch on the fact that the best moment of the season, filled with amazing moments, is when Pascal and Aaliyah get back from
their romantic getaway,
their court, and they can't bring back food. So Aaliyah decides she's going to offer everyone a half sucked on mint. And my favorite line from V in that scene is, she says, "Sweetie, no, thank you very much, though. Like, I appreciate it." And Sean gives a confessional, and it's like, "Oh yeah, it's like offer me eat this piece of doo doo." Like, it's such great confessionals.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, but it was also at that moment that I realized, because throughout the might be putting on a bit of a front. Mm-hmm. It was at that moment I realized, wow, maybe Millie is just super innocent and just not really aware of how she's coming off to people. Because I know Sean mentions the fact that he thinks she's fake, and I personally thought she was fake until that moment where I'm like, wow, she's really like this. I'm pretty sure that she's Mormon, so that might go along with it, because Mormons are very nice people.
Yeah, I am Mormon. No, I'm not singing that. You know, it's like a Mormon from South Park people.
Oh yeah. So we get to the final five, tribal council, and Kathy's in the middle. They've finally taken out all the Rotu 4. Kathy's in the middle. She's caught between V and Sean and Lee and Pascal. And Sean's fighting for his life. And I love this tribal because Sean's fighting. Like, he really wants to stay. He's doing all he can to make sure that Kathy votes with him and V. Now, before I get to how it actually happens, how do you feel Kathy should have voted in this situation?
I 100% think she voted the wrong way. I was like, why did you do that? Why did you vote Sean out? Basically, because Pascal was talking to her and saying, me and Aaliyah are never going to vote against each other. And that's a fact. But Sean and V, they're not going to do that either. So go with us because we admit it. That was his reasoning. Like, we admit it. And they'll admit it. Why wouldn't you go with someone who you think might vote against the other person? Like V, like you said, he's voted against Sean and multiple, not like voted differently than Sean multiple different times.
Yeah.
More likely of her to get to the end with those two than with Pascal and Leah that would rather go to Rocks and vote each other out. That made no sense to me at all. I think she should have went with Sean. She would have maybe won because she could have maybe won the final immunity challenge because then the Leah wouldn't screw her over.
We'll get to that one.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But I think we should have voted Pascal then or Nalia. Well, she was thinking about voting Nalia because V wanted her to. So I think it should have been Nalia that night instead of Sean.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Like you said, V has shown that she will vote differently from people. She's just trying to keep herself in the game.
Yeah.
But sadly, Kathy
has this weird loyalty with someone else like Pascal does with Nalia.
Yeah, I will never vote for Sweet Pea. I'll never vote for Pappy. It's like, wow, you guys are super weird.
That's super weird.
So they go ahead and they vote out Sean, and like that, Sean just is out of game mode. He's really cordial. He's really cool with the whole thing, which I loved. I loved about him especially is because he was playing so hard, and as soon as he gets voted out, he kind of realizes, okay, I'm out. I'm back to being a person, whatever that means. So Sean goes away, and we're down to the final four, and this is my favorite V moment of the entire season because she basically uses a cheat code. She has been keeping notes all season on everyone because she knows that the Fallen Comrades challenge is probably going to happen at some point. So she has a dossier on every single player that's played in the game because I think she has played with every player in the game.
Yeah.
Because, she by the time they got to Rotu, all the Rotu people were still there. Yeah. So she played with everyone in the game. So she knew about everyone. And everyone's asking her, like, oh, do you know where Patricia was from and all these other things. And she's giving them vague answers because she knows if she loses this game, she's out, and it's going to be Kathy, Pascal, and Nalia.
Yeah.
So we get to Fallen Comrades. V wins. And immediately Kathy starts scrambling because she knows she has to go because Pascal and Nalia have no one else to vote for because they're not voting for each other.
Yeah.
And before we get to the actual Rock draw, what are your opinions on the Rock draw as a whole and the 3 times that they've happened in the show's history?
As a whole, I understand why CBS does it, I think, because it's so crazy and so scary because they're like, the producer's like, okay, we don't want to tie, so what can we do to discourage ties? Well, let's have a random Rock draw. And I do like it way better than the previous seasons where it was how many votes you have. If it's a tie, if you have more votes in the past, then you're out. I think that was really, I did not like that at all. And I didn't like the quiz either.
Yeah, the quiz was lame.
Yes,
lame.
But I really don't like the Rocks because it can screw up someone's game that you really like and you want to win for just nothing, just for no reason.
Yeah.
Thankfully that Tyson did not get out in Blood versus Water. That was the only time when I was like, oh my gosh, this stupid Rocks thing. I was so mad. And then Russell's season when John could have used the Rocks instead of voting Thor out.
Yeah, but instead of he flipped.
But he flipped and voted Rocks and wouldn't go to Rocks. I'm like, that's a smart move. That's what you do. Why risk it?
It was a smart move until he got voted out the very next episode. Well, I think the same thing happened to Cochran in South Pacific, where it's like, okay, I can either choose to go to Rocks or I'll flip. And then, he makes it a couple more votes before he gets voted out. And so, my opinion on the Rocks are, I understand why they do it because it makes for great television. Because there's all the suspense because they always zoom in on every person's hand before they open their hand to reveal who got the white rock, or is it Black Rock now or White Rock?
Purple.
Well, it's Purple Rock in Marquesas, but whatever the wrong rock is in the last 2 times they've done it. So we have Blood versus Water, where, I think the fact that it ended up being Katie, it was fine because Katie, she was a character that season. Yeah. But of the people still left in the game, I didn't mind so much her going home. I would have rather her go home than Sierra or Hayden. Yeah. Or Tyson, obviously. Yeah. And then in Millennials versus Gen X, my bias once again coming out, because as much as it sucked watching Jessica go home and her reaction, the fact that she did it to save my bae, my boo, my spirit animal, Hannah Shapiro, made it perfect, because I got to get more Hannah for the last 8 or 9 episodes of the season. But it was horrible to watch Jessica go out like that. So when we back in Marquesas, though, when it's the first time we've done this,
yes,
and we have Pascal, Nalia, and Kathy going to Rocks. Of those 3 people, the person I want to go home the most absolutely ended up going home. Thank goodness. And he nearly falls on the floor, which I thought was a cute moment.
Yeah.
So he goes away.
Yeah.
And we're down to Kathy, Nalia, and V. Now, before we get to that final 3, talk about Kathy's negotiation at that final 4, because it's very important going into the final immunity challenge.
Yes. Yes. So V had the immunity battle. Kathy was on the chopping block. Her only option was to go to V and say, make a tie, vote for Nalia, make a tie, so if we go to Rob, so I have a chance of staying. She went to V for a favor. V owes her nothing in return. Kathy went to her for a favor. V owes her nothing in return. That's not. I was researching online, and they said that her and Kathy made a pact, and then V betrayed Kathy later on in the final tribal. And I was like, how does that make any sense when someone comes to you for a favor and you say, save me, you're helping them out. So why does V need to help her out then in the final immunity challenge? That made no sense to me. She was just being nice to Kathy.
And I honestly think that if V had won, actually, I don't see that, because V was smart enough to realize that she was not going to beat Kathy. Yeah, V was smart enough to realize she was probably not going to beat Kathy, so she probably would have taken the lead. But what happens is they get to the hand on the pole challenge, and we alluded to this earlier. And I'm going to let you take it away, because for years I've been saying this, and every time I show this season to people, agree with me.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100%.
So what happens?
So they're all 3 has their hand on the statue, and it's been like 3 hours. Then Nalia tells Kathy, "Oh, your blouse is coming down. Your blouse is coming down." So Kathy's like, "Oh," and then takes her hands off it, or whatever she does, and she gets out, and Jess is like, "Kathy, you're done." And 100%, she did that to mess her up. Like, there's no other option.
Yeah, and she tried to play off as all shucks.
Like, Richard Koch is like naked all the time, and you're playing for $1 million. Who cares if your blouse is going to $1 million? I mean, what the heck? I don't.
Well, I mean, the fact that Nalia was able to trick her like that, once again, credit to her. Yeah, credit to her. But almost immediately after Kathy goes out, V is just, oh yeah, if I leave, will you just take me to the final? And Nalia says, yeah, sure. And then she gives a confessional where she says, I was already going to take V to the final because she said she had a better chance of beating V. And I agree. Either one of them would have been stupid to take Kathy, because I felt like Kathy was probably going to win. And we're going to talk about the whole Kathy thing after she gets voted out. So we get to that tribal. They vote out Kathy. We're down to Nalia and Vecepia. Now, there's this belief that Kathy was the robbed goddess on this season, and that she was robbed. And I don't really believe in robbed players on Survivor. The only player that I could say was robbed was probably Cirie and Game Changers, just because she actually got screwed. But other than that, I understand that Kathy, was everyone's favorite player, but that doesn't mean
just because they didn't win doesn't mean they're wrong.
Much. So the fact that they vote, the fact that they vote her out, I understand that from a game perspective. But the fact that there's all these people that believe the host in this situation, and shame on V for doing that. Like you mentioned earlier, where she backstabbed her. It's like, no, she really didn't. She was playing the game. Yeah, she was playing the game, and that makes Kathy very bitter when we get to Final Tribal.
Yeah. Okay, Kathy.
So we get to.
Now she helps you. Now she has to help you again. That's her reason.
Yeah.
Like, you helped me, so now you gotta help me again because you already helped me once.
That doesn't sound like a beneficial deal to me. So, so we get to Final Tribal, and we have two very different. I guess Nalia says her game started at the merge, at the final 9. That's when she said she started playing the game. V says from the beginning she came here and she was going to make friends with people. She was going to strategize and she was going to make sure people liked her.
Yeah.
Nalia, she's playing up the all shucks thing a little too much. And I feel like that's what eventually kind of bites in the ass when the votes start happening. But the jury comes up, and of the 7 jury members, 6 of them are row 2. So realistically, Nalia should win this one easily. Maybe one person strays away and votes for V, but 6-1 or 5-2 is what it should be based off of what we've seen in previous seasons.
Yeah. Oh,
so we get all these jury members going, and the only 2 that don't come off super bitter are Pascal and Sean. One, because they already know who they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
But 2, like, I felt like they kind of understood the game aspect, which when Pascal gives his confessional when he votes, maybe not.
Yeah, true.
So they're nice about everything, and then the other 5 get up there, and you could have at it, but it's bad.
Well, one that stuck out most to me was John and Tammy, but mostly Tammy when she said, "You guys," am I back? Is my audio?
No, you're good. You're good.
When she said, "You guys lied, cheated, and stole your way to the top," and I was just like, I had to put it on pause and like rewind it to comprehend that statement. It made absolutely no sense. She's talking to Sweet Pea and V, and they said that they lied, and they said she cheated. And that was an absurd statement. But what was the crazy thing was she said, I came here, I was going to lie, and I was going to do whatever it took to win. But you guys came in here and you acted all innocent. But then you did the same stuff I was going to do, and now you're here. So basically she was saying they played how she wanted to play, but they play it better, so then they should because they play it better than her. It made no sense.
Well, and she says, the reason I stopped playing like that is because I met you 2, and you guys are so innocent, and I felt bad. It's like, why did you feel bad? Just play the game, Tammy. Yeah. God. And John basically says the same thing. It's like, why should I vote for either one of you? You guys both did this and that. And you guys pretend to be all Christian and everything, but you're out here lying and stuff. And, the people have talked about this a lot on a lot of podcasts, and I just had this opinion as well. Survivor is a game.
Yes.
And as a person that, comes from an athletic background, I've played sports and I coach sports. In sports situations and in competitive situations, I feel like it's all right to do certain things as long as they fall within the realm of the rules. Mm-hmm. So in Survivor, there's no rules against lying or flipping on people or anything like that. So the fact that jury members can get up there and call out these 2 people for being religious but are also lying, it's like, yeah.
Like, that's the game.
I've also lies that make, yeah. I mean, I'm not the most religious person, but, I wouldn't feel bad for lying playing a game, especially if lying is the part of the... Everyone has played the game bullshit, and bullshit is nothing but lying. So should I repent my sins now because I won bullshit? No. So the fact that they're going off on these girls about that was just kind of... I felt... I mean, you get a lot of these bitter juries in the earlier seasons, so I understand, I guess. But also, relax a little bit.
Did you call him lie? I mean, only thing, like you said, maybe V lied when she said that she didn't know the questions to the answers about the other kind.
Yeah. Tammy and John weren't there for that, though.
Why would you tell the answers to that?
Yeah. And Tammy and John weren't there, so they wouldn't know that she lied about it.
Yeah. They wouldn't even know she lied about it. You're right.
Yeah. So
what was she? I want to know what she was referring to when she said all that. Like, what were you referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. And V does give a confessional where she says, I've done certain things that I'm going to have to answer to God about. Okay, that's fine. But even if she didn't say that, I don't feel like she was breaking any of her, religious beliefs by doing things in a game.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So
I don't know what she did that she would even think. I can't even.
Yeah.
Because the thing.
She didn't do anything. She didn't do anything.
Yeah.
She didn't do anything. So we get to the vote. Nalia gets Pascal, obviously. She gets Kathy because Kathy is bitter, backstabbed her. Yeah, because V backstabbed her. And then she randomly gets Zoe's, and Zoe has the V does not stand for victory today. Nalia is the sole survivor, which was weird. But V gets John, Sean, Tammy, and Rob, the general, and wins. And like I said at the beginning of the show, watching it as a kid and watching it now, and all the times in between, watching as a kid, I cried when V won. As an adult, and the most was in October, I'm pretty sure, I cried again when V won because that moment will always be at at the top or close to the top of my favorite Survivor moments because of how big of an impact it had on me as a child. And like we said earlier, it's a travesty that this season has been swept under the rug, much like Guatemala, because there are so many important things that happen in the season that impact seasons moving forward. One of the biggest things that we haven't really even talked about is Zeppy played the Sandra game first.
Oh yeah.
She was willing to vote out people that she may have made like a mini alliance with or have made promises to. So the Kathy thing, she voted out Boston Rob. Her saying that she could potentially vote against Sean. I don't think she would have ever voted against Sean, but who's to tell? So she played one of the most dominant under the radar games that have been played to that point. And honestly, I think she played the Sandra game better the first time. I think Sandra in Heroes vs. Villains is probably better than Sandra in Pearl Islands, but that's not really. I'm a big Sandra stan, so take this with a grain of salt. I still think that V played a better game than Sandra in Pearl Islands because she was able to actually strategize as well as playing that social game, which, as people are slowly starting to realize very late, the physical game doesn't really matter. The strategic game, it matters, and the strategic game matters, and you have to make your little moves here and there. That's cool. The social game is the only thing, at the end of the day, that matters the most. Yes, and V played the best social game of her and Nalia because everyone thought Nalia was fake. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't think she was being fake. I think she was just being too nice. Yeah. V was able to, like Boston Rob said, kiss the asses of all the Row 2 people. But guess what? Of the 6 Row 2 people on the jury, 3 of them voted for her. So it worked. So she played a great social game. She had her little strategy moves. And as you mentioned earlier, she played a new and an older season.
Yeah.
Because she had the social thing, but she also had her couple of big moves sprinkled in there. I would compare her almost to like Tommy or Michelle Fitzgerald, which I love Michelle Fitzgerald. I think she gets a bad rap. I think people are starting to come around to her now, especially after Winners at War. But it's a travesty that they've never had V back. It's a travesty they've never had Sean Rector back, and John Carroll especially. Like I said, Boston Rob is cool. He's enjoyable sometimes, but I don't think that him and Kathy should have been the only people to come back from this season.
Sean should have definitely came back. V 100%. I don't know how she never even played again.
Yeah, I honestly think that they were that pissed off that she got rid of the Rob goddess that is Kathy that they didn't want her back, and that she made boring tell shit. But
I mean,
so final thoughts on the season.
Well, no, I agree. I mean, she definitely is underrated winner, 100%. What really bothers me about this season is Nalia almost won. Like, V only won by 1 vote. And if John would have just flipped the coin and voted for, Nalia instead, Nalia would have won that. Talk about travesty.
Yeah. Well, see, I see where you're coming from with that. I've never put too much stock in how many votes a person wins by, only because I know it's a cliche, but a win's a win. Yeah. But yes, we were 1 vote away from having an Aaliyah win, which I don't think it would have been the worst thing because she was super.
She was nice, but she only
nice. She was super nice.
She was super nice.
Yeah,
she did one good move, which is getting John out and all that. But it would have been.
And she brought back the half men, which is like a big deal. Yeah. The fact that they didn't want her men, it's not her fault. But no. But seriously, yeah, I wouldn't hate if Nalia had won, but I'm really happy V won. I'm really happy V won. So yeah, I guess we've already touched on what happened to all these people after the show, as far as people that have come back. Kathy comes back for All Stars. She's one of Boston Rob's many victims, and then she still votes for him at the end. Didn't help him, but she still votes for him. Boston Rob is a legend. Everyone knows the story of Boston Rob. And, I'm hoping that as history continues to move on, come around to more cases. And I'll tell you this, when I was watching Russell's top 100 list, I think the bottom winner was Chris Underwood on the 100 list. The lowest ranked winner was
his second.
Yeah. So as I'm watching the episodes and all these winners are showing up, including some really good winners, and I still don't see V's name popping up, I'm starting to get uncomfortable because I'm like, is Russell and the Survivor Specialist and all these people, they're just gonna not put V on here? Are you serious? And then I'm pretty sure she ended up at 34. I want to say 34. And when she came up, I hopped out of bed and made me a celebratory shot because it was the greatest day of my life since V won Survivor Marquesas back when I was a child. And I was so happy the fact that, to her credit, because she's always looked at as a lower tier winner. But if you really watch Marquesas, she's a very cutthroat winner. She's in my middle tier of winners. So I don't think she's the GOAT or anything, but she's definitely not Chris or Natalie or anything. And like I've said before, with Survivor winners, I don't think that there is a worst. I think there is a best, and I think there is a least best, because you still won Survivor.
Yeah, you still
you still won Survivor. Yeah, a win is a win. The Giants beat the 16-0 Patriots. Were they the best team that season? No, but they were the best team that day.
Yes.
And that's all that really matters. So, I've never been one to dump on winners because they didn't play better than the person they were sitting next to. So when the fact that I saw Vesepi that high on that list, yes, I know that list isn't the end-all be-all, but to see people in the Survivor community give her that much respect in 2020 was it was a real big deal to me.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Me, especially.
And
so,
was Sean on it? I forget.
Sean was not on it, no.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe Sean was on it. I think the only people from our cases that were on there were Kathy, Rob, and Vesepi.
Oh, okay. So then maybe he might have been an honorable mention, maybe.
He might have been. I know the only honorable mention I remember is PG and Francesca randomly for some reason. And who?
And Sugar. Sugar wasn't on one.
And Sugar, I like Sugar. Sugar's cool.
Where
Where do you rank Marquesas if you have a ranking, or like, just even if you want to go tier wise, where do you have Marquesas? And has it always been at that spot that you have it now?
No, it's definitely not at the spot where it is now. But I would say for me, I think it's number 5 for me because it's
all time. Wow.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I won't tell you my list right now, but I think it's number 5.
Wow.
I don't want anyone to know my number 1 choice, so I'll tell you later.
I already know what it is, and it's a hot take, but it's fine. See, I have Marquesas at 28th, which that's lower, but there, in my opinion, there's only 3 bad seasons of Survivor, and then everything else is either mediocre to really good. And the only I would say 2 bad seasons, and that's Thailand and Island of the Idols, which we've talked about before. I feel like Island of the Idols is probably a lot better if you can kind of turn off your brain to certain things that go on, because there's a lot of great characters on there. But we're not talking about Island of the Idols today. But yeah, I have Marquesas at 28th, and I probably year goes on and I keep rewatching all these seasons. So I'm hoping, and I know I'm a broken record at this point, but I'm hoping that people start to put more respect on Marquesas' name, because it's very underrated.
People just need to watch it again just to see, because people they don't remember it like me, who just remember it was Rob's first season, and then just rewatching, you're just like, what? This is an amazing season.
Yeah.
And I do think they give it another chance. But that's what Russell and them need.
Anything else before we bounce? What's up?
What? I said, Russell,
do you have anything else before we bounce?
Top seasons.
That'll
be an easy one,
Yeah.
The top seasons of top 100 or whatever.
Yeah, and maybe down the line, I would love to reveal some of my. I don't think I have hot takes. I don't think I have hot takes, but I know that your number 1 is a hot take, and I'm hoping we can talk about it one day in depth, because I have to get at that. But we're gonna end it there. We appreciate people taking the time out to watch and or listen to this. We will touch base the next time we put something out. Hopefully it'll be soon. Topic wise, I think it's all up in the air right now, but we could talk about pretty much anything Survivor related. Trav, do you have anything to say before we bounce?
I just wanted to say, oh my heck.
Oh my heck.
I said the whole time that was.
Yeah, we got through an hour and 2 minutes without ever saying oh my heck, which is Nalia's catchphrase.
I have never heard that ever before in my life until watching that.
I haven't heard it since then.
It's actually a Mormon phrase, apparently, because my sisters have like friends in Disney that work that are Mormons, and they say, "Oh yeah, oh my heck!" They say it all the time. It's it's in Utah. It's like a phrase.
Oh my gosh, it's so adorable. I need to see what Nalia is up to in life now.
I found her on Instagram. Actually, I found her on Instagram.
Oh,
she liked one of the Tyson's things, and I'm like, Nalia.
But we'll talk to y'all on the other side, and we're out.
See ya.